Hello everyone, and welcome to the video that I have been talking about making for a while, but I think it's time I finally do it. This is the full explanation of how the DST, D&D skill tree system works. This is, of course, the system that I've been putting videos up, and I finally got the documents going up on Google Docs of classes that I've made that use skill trees instead of a regular skill progression. The idea behind this is that I want to make leveling up as a character more fun and more creative than the base level D&D system. You basically just take levels, and the only customization options you really have, unless the class gives you some, are your subclasses. With my system instead, the way that it's going to be functioning is that as you level up, you'll be taking these boxes which are called branches. And whenever you take one, it gives you the features that are inside of it. So for example, right now I have a fighter that has 4 branches here, and I have all the features within them. The way that you take these branches is by leveling up in the same way that you level up in the base game. Now, whenever you level up, you'll take 2 branches, unless it's level 1. And we'll go over level 1 later. But the basic idea behind this is that you level up, you can take any branch that is connected by one of these lines to a branch you already have. So, for example, if I was to level up in Fighter right now, I would get 2 new branches. Again, these boxes are the branches. So I could take this feat right here, because it's connected to blind fighting, which I already have collected. And so I've gained 1 branch, and I get 1 more branch afterwards. Now, I could take a branch over here, a branch, any of these branches, which are all connected to this branch that I have. I could take this one, which is connected to this one, or I could take this one over here, which is connected to the one I just took. You can take a branch that is connected to one you just took, even if you took it that level. So, for example, in this level up, I just took this branch and this branch. Now, even though this branch was not connected to one I already had, it was after I took 1 branch. Now, like I said, taking levels in this class is very simple. You just take 2 branches in any class you have access to, and this includes multiclassing. But I want to go into detail about that level 1 that you take, because level 1 is a bit different. When you take level 1, you'll be gaining 3 branches instead of 2. But the first branch you take in the entire game is going to determine what your main class is. So if I take Fighter as my main class, I get these starting benefits and second wind of this branch. And of course, if you want to see what these features are, there'll be a page right next to it in that document that I have linked below that says every single feature that you have access to. So whenever you gain the starting benefits, you can gain this feature, and you also gain second wind. These are the 2 features within this branch that is the starting branch. Now, unlike when you level up later, the starting benefit is the one you get from your first level up. But if you take other classes later through multiclassing or subclassing, you do not gain the starting benefits. You only gain the starting benefits when it's your first branch you take of the entire game. The other thing determined when you take your first branch is your hit dice for the rest of the game and your spell stat for the rest of the game. Now, what this means is that if you're starting Fighter, you will have a D10 hit dice. When you level up in Fighter, you'll be getting D hit dice to roll to add to your max HP. But if you took a different class, like Barbarian, for example, you could roll a D12 for your hit dice. But whenever you take a short rest and you roll hit dice, you'll be rolling D10s no matter what other classes you have. You'll be rolling D10s because your starting class is Fighter. Another example of this could be if you're hit with the spell Wither and Bloom and allowed to heal with it, you would be rolling the D10 for your hit dice. Even if you have a bunch of Barbarian levels later, the D10 is your hit dice for the rest of the game because you started Fighter. The spell stat works in basically the exact same way. If Fighter is your main class, for the rest of the game, whenever you cast a spell or a creature has to make a saving throw based off your spell save DC, Intelligence is the stat that will be used to determine what that is, or what the modifier is for if you're making the attack roll. So even if you take a bunch of Sorcerer or Cleric levels later, you'll still be using intelligence as your spell casting stat. Now, what this allows is for more creativity between spell casting combinations. For example, in the past, if you were playing a cleric, multiclassing as a sorcerer didn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense. Because for one thing, your spellcasting progression would be all messed up, but that also is fixed later. I'll explain that when I get into spellcasting. But the other problem is that wisdom and charisma would both need to be decently high in order for both of your spell save DCs to be decent. But using this system, if you started cleric, wisdom will be your spell stat for the rest of the game. You'd gain the starting benefits of cleric, and then you could take sorcerer levels later, and you still use wisdom as your spell stat. Now, just like fighter, if you're taking cleric as your main class, your hit dice will be d8s, which means whenever you take a short rest or use hit dice for anything other than leveling up, you'll be rolling d8s. Unlike every level afterwards, you'll be taking 3 branches for your first level. So for example, if I was playing a cleric, I could grab 3 branches like this and already get a +2 caster. I'll explain what that means later. But the basic premise is that level 1, you'll get 3 branches, and every level afterwards, you'll take 2. Again, these square boxes are called branches. But the other thing you can do at level 1 is when you're taking your 3 branches, you don't need to put all of them into the same class. So for example, I could take these 2 levels in Cleric, still have Cleric be my starting class, but then take a branch in, say, Oracle. Now, since Cleric is still my starting branch, D8s will still be my hit dice, even though the Oracle has D6s. And even though Oracle has Constitution as its spell stat, I would still be using Wisdom, because Cleric is my main class. Also, even though I'm taking a branch in Oracle that has the starting benefits on it, I do not gain the starting benefits of Oracle, because I only gain starting benefits when you start in the class. And since I started in Cleric, I do not gain Oracle starting benefits. What this is called is a subclass from this point on. Now, yes, subclass is not quite the same thing definition-wise as it is in the base game, but that's what I'm going to be calling it from now on. There are 3 types of classes: your main class, your subclasses, because you can have up to 2, or your multi-classes. And I'll be explaining multi-classing later as well. So basically, right now, you are a main class cleric with 2 branches, with Oracle as your subclass, having 1 branch in it. Again, all you'll be getting from Oracle right now is the cursed spell feature within this branch, not the starting benefits. Of course, I could have, instead of taking this ASI over here, also put this other branch into a different class, and then I would have 2 subclasses. There are 4 ways you can level up. Way number 1 is main class leveling. You take 2 branches in your main class. So, for example, I can take these 2 branches. I can gain the features +1 prepared spells and +1 caster. And now I'm a level 2 character with 4 branches in Cleric and a subclass of Oracle having 1 branch. And say next level I wanted to subclass level. This is where you take 2 branches in your subclass. So say I wanted to gain +1 curse level and +1 caster from Oracle. Now I'm a level 3 character that has 4 branches in Cleric and 3 branches in my subclass Oracle. The third way you can level up, and we'll say I do this for my next level as this character, is by multi-class leveling. Now, in the exact same way as subclass leveling doesn't give you the starting benefits, this still does not give you the starting benefits. You only get the starting benefits of the first branch in any class if it's your main class. But multi-class leveling, you just take a new class and start leveling it. Again, 2 branches, just like every level after first. So now I am a level 4 character. Cleric is my main class, and I have 4 branches in it. Oracle is my subclass, and I have 3 branches in it. And Rogue is my multi-class, and I have 2 branches in it. And all of these features will stack up into your character, and this is how you can really customize it. But now let me go into the 4th way that you can level up. This method of leveling up is what's called split leveling, and it only functions if you do it between your main class and one of your subclasses. So for example, if I wanted to split level right now for my 5th level, I could take one branch in Cleric and one branch in Oracle. As you can see, I've still only taken 2 branches, just like a normal level up does, but I've taken one in Oracle and one in Cleric, so I've split leveled. You're only allowed to do this if you are doing it between your main class and your subclass. And the benefit of it is that even though I leveled up Oracle, which has a d6 for hit dice, I still get to roll a d8. And that's because when you level up split class, you roll the hit dice of your main class, even if you were split class leveling. So for all these other examples, when I leveled up just Oracle, so these 2 branches I took here, I rolled a d6 for my hit dice because I took a level in Oracle. When I multi-classed Rogue over here, I rolled a d8 for my hit dice because I took a level in Rogue. And when I just leveled up my Cleric, I again rolled a d8 because it's my main class and that's the level that I'm taking. Again, whenever you take a short rest or roll hit dice for any other reason other than leveling, you'll be rolling a d8 because of Cleric. But when I split class leveled here, I rolled the hit dice of my Cleric because it's my main class, and that is the point of split leveling. It allows you to, as, for example, if you wanted to be an Eldritch Knight and take levels in Fighter and Wizard and Sorcerer, you would, even though those classes have d6s for hit dice, you could roll a d10 every single time if you split class leveled the whole time. So for example, if we started Fighter and took our subclass as Sorcerer, we could start getting the benefits of Sorcerer while using the hit dice of a Fighter. Our overall spell progression will be slower because we'll only be able to take one branch in Sorcerer every level because we're taking the other branch in Fighter. And this allows characters that want to be, half-caster type characters that are being gishy to level up their spellcasting prowess at the same time as their martial prowess without sacrificing hit points. It comes at a slower rate to your spell progression, but you can keep your hit points much higher. And that was the main thing that I wanted to do when it comes to subclass leveling. If you want to split level to get your subclass and your main class, keep them at the same rate and keep boosting the prowess of either one of them to get better in whatever you're trying to do, you can do that and keep your hit points consistent. Next, I want to just talk about a bit of terminology, and I've already brought up a little bit of terminology throughout the video, but let me go into more detail. Again, your starting branch is only going to be giving you the starting benefits, but every single one of these square boxes is called a branch. So for example, right now, I am a level 1 magician as my main class, and I've got 3 branches in it. 1, 2, and 3. This is important because certain features, like the fighter's second wind, will refer to the amount of branches you have in a class. And the idea behind this is that I've kind of tried to take the system of checking for your levels out of the game and replace it with checking for branches. Another thing that's important to note is what this right here is. This is a path-ending branch, or a branch end. What that means is that after you've taken this branch, there are no more branches connected to it that you can take. It's the end branch. And what I will say when I get to some of these ending branches is what the dedication you need to get that feature online is. So, for example, Prepped Stage over here requires this branch, this branch, this branch, this branch, this branch, this branch, and the starting branch, which means that the commitment to that feature is 8 branches. You need to take 8 branches in Magician to reach this branch, this end branch. And I'll often say this because a lot of the ending branches are really strong features that you might want to pick up for a certain multi-class or a certain combo that you're looking for. And this can be useful in planning your progression through your class system. This, of course, is not necessary. If you want to just pick up a class that you think looks cool and pick features as you go, That is a totally valid way to play the game and should not be shamed upon. The other thing I want to bring up that is very important and will be seen on every single class in this game is ASIs, feats, and proficiency bonus increases. Now, these are on every single class. They have varying degrees of how often you'll see them. For example, there's actually a lot of ASIs on the Magician, but other spellcasting classes won't have as many. This is based off of what the overall spellcasting level can get to and other factors involved. But the premise is that these features are not explained on the page that you'll see next to the class that give you what all the features do. And that's because they're basically keywords where you just, whenever you see them, you know what they do without having to look it up. An ASI is an ability score improvement. When you get an ASI, you get to put +2 to one of your skills or +1 to 2 of your skills. Of course, the skills being strength, constitution, dexterity, wisdom, charisma, or intelligence. So, for example, if you're a magician and you want a high charisma skill because your charisma is your spell stat, you could, when you gain this ASI, put a +2 to your charisma. Of course, in order to get there, you still need to take these two branches as always. What a feat does is whenever you get a branch that has the feat feature, you look on the list of feats and you pick one and you gain the features from that feat. It's basically works the exact same way it does in regular D&D, but instead of having the ASI and feats be the exact same thing like they are in regular D&D, they are split between these two different branches. So the feat branch will give you a feat, and the ASI branch will give you an ability score improvement. A quick sidebar into feats, I forgot to mention this when I was recording mainly, but I realized I needed to add this. The only thing that's kind of different about feats in this edition than normal edition, and obviously you can use your own feat list, doesn't matter to me, but is that feats have a leveling system of their own. So, for example, if you wanted to take the proficient feat, you'd take it once to gain the level 1 benefits of the feat. You could take it twice to gain the level 2 benefits of the feat, and you could take it a third time to get the level 3 benefits of the feat. This allows feats to be split up into categories where somewhat really strong feats can be split into two halves. For example, the sharpshooter feat, which I think is a little bit too strong in its base form, but almost got too weak in its newer form, is now just split into two feats. You take the first level of sharpshooter to gain attacking at long range within 5 feet doesn't impose disadvantage on your ranged attack rolls, and your ranged weapon attacks ignore half and 3/4 cover. But then if you take it again to get its second level feat, you can take a -5 to hit on your ranged weapon attacks, and if you do so, you gain a +10 to the damage on the attack. It's not really that complicated. Basically, every single feat on this list either has one level feature, such as Crossbow Expert, you only get the level 1 feature here, but certain ones will have more than one. So if you wanted to be a Blunt Bruiser, you could take the level 1 Blunt Bruiser martial feat, or you could take it again to gain its level 2 benefits. Notably, my system has a lot more feats and ability score improvements than regular D&D, but that is because the way that my system is set up, you're supposed to start with lower overall stats than a regular D&D character would, and so the extra ASIs will help flesh out your character as you progress through it. The only other one I want to bring up is the +1 proficiency bonus. This is another one that's seen on every single class, seen often, and usually there's 2 to 4 proficiency bonus increases on every skill list. As you can see on this one, it actually does have 4. One here, one here, one here, and one here. And what this allows you to do is, on a regular character, you'll start with around a +1 to +2 to your proficiency bonus, and as you level up, you can take these branches that give you a +1 to your proficiency bonus, and this will, as you can probably guess, cause your proficiency bonus to go up 1. Unlike normal D&D, your proficiency bonus will not be increasing consistently as you level up like it does normally. It only increases when you reach these proficiency bonus increase branches, which means if you care about your proficiency bonus, you're probably going to want to take some of these branches to boost that proficiency bonus, because if you don't, it's not going to passively increase. If you really care about your proficiency bonus, there are features that you can take, and there are feats that you can take also that can help boost it even more. For example, the Rogue gives you a +1 max to your proficiency bonus, because just like in the regular game, +6 is the maximum your proficiency bonus can get to. But if you get a +1 max to your proficiency bonus, your maximum is now +7. You do not yet have +7, but the maximum you can get to is 7. The other thing I want to talk about is the caster type features that are seen on many casters. These are branches that give you abilities that, again, are not written on the skill sheet. You can figure out what they do without having to look at them. So, for example, the +n, where n is a number, cantrip, in this case it's +1. When you gain that feature, you can pick a cantrip from any list you have access to and gain a cantrip from that list. And you have access to use that cantrip however you want, whenever you want, because it's a cantrip that's castable for free. The other thing you can get is a +n caster. N is a number. In this case, +2 caster. The basic goal behind this is to give you a progressing level for your caster that is not connected to your main level. And this allows multiclassing to be easier amongst classes. So let me bring up this graph here. This graph is how you determine how many spell slots you have per long rest as a regular caster. +2 caster is this jump here, and you can see the jumps throughout the entire thing in power level. And also notably, the power level of this is higher than the base game, because if you get all the way to level 35 caster, you'll have 2 9th level spell slots per long rest. You actually get that a few levels early, and you can see that this is stronger than basic casting. But that is because most classes will never max this out. Even if they get all their branches collected, they will still not have enough caster to get to this level 35. The wizard, on the other hand, does have this capability, and this is how I've tried to make the classes a little more balanced. Every class in this system, there are not like the full casters, the half casters, and the third casters like there are in regular D&D. Every class has a bit of a difference in how high the caster level they can get to. And now your caster level is not connected to your regular level. And because of this, you can do things like take levels in Bard and levels in Cleric and have those mixed up spell progression without losing out on spell slots. Let me explain how this works. So, for example, in the Bard's case, you get known spells because you are a spontaneous caster. So when you pick up these branches that give you the +2 spells known or +3 spells known, any feature along those lines, you gain more known spells. This is exactly like it is in the regular class, where you gain known spells, you pick any spell from the list that you have access to, in this case the Bard list, and you have those spells known. For the rest of your career, you can cast those spells as long as you have a spell slot that can cast it. The only big difference is that, unlike regular D&D, there is no limit on how high of a spell you can take. So if you gain +2 known spells, you could take a 9th level spell as one of those known spells, even if you can't cast it. There wouldn't really be a point to do this, but the idea behind that is that if you're multiclassing Bard with Cleric, you gain access to both the Bard spell list and the Cleric spell list, which allows you to mix and match spells however you want. So if you were a Bard and you gain this +2 known spells, one of those known spells could be a Cleric spell. And even as long as you have the caster level to cast it, you can cast it. This allows for more freedom when it comes to selecting your spells for the day or selecting your spell list as you level up. Obviously, prepared spellcasters have more freedom than known spellcasters, but that's part of the balance between the classes. The other thing I want to bring up is that spell list that I was talking about earlier. How do you determine what spell lists you have access to? Branches, like the Bard's starting branch, which gives you the starting benefits, and glamour spells will give you those spell lists. Glamour spells says you gain access to the Bard spell list, a +2 to your caster level, and you learn 2 cantrips. You are a spontaneous caster, and you will gain 4 known spells from any list you have access to. And this is how all the spellcasting classes will be worded. You'll gain access to a spell list, then you'll get then you'll get a bonus to your caster level or bonus spell slots in some manner, along with cantrips sometimes. And then you'll be told if you are a spontaneous caster, a prepared spellcaster, or a special spellcaster. And those are the 3 types that you can be. And then if you're spontaneous, you'll gain known spells. If you're prepared, you'll gain prepared spells. And if you're special, you'll be given spells or spell slots in a way that is different from all the other ones. Those will be discussed individually as I get to classes that are special spellcasters, because they all work a bit different. And the point of this overarching system of spellcasting is to try to make spellcasters feel way more effective for multiclassing purposes. I really like multiclassing. That's my favorite part of D&D. And having difficulties with multiclassing spellcasters makes me a little bit annoyed, and that's why the system was built in the way it was. It was made specifically to make things easier for multiclassing and make combinations of classes more fun, interesting, and diverse. Next, I just want to quick bring up the martial caster divide. This is the big problem that D&D has had basically all its life. And I am not by any means trying to claim that I have fixed this problem. It is a problem that stems basically from the fact that spells are really powerful. And if you have access to spells, you're just going to be stronger than somebody who doesn't have access to spells. But I think I've done some things to flesh out the roles a little better so that perhaps it will seem less arduous, that gap between the marshals and casters. Basically, spellcasters got buffed. I mean, like I showed you that graph earlier, they literally have more spell slots available to them than they did in the past. They've gotten buffed in the fact that things like Constitution can be used as a spell stat if you take certain paths, and they've gotten buffed in ways to get higher hit points, such as the subclass split leveling system that I explained earlier, where you can take a martial class that has a higher hit dice system and mix it with a class that has lower hit dice. It can make you a lot stronger. But it comes at the sacrifice of having spellcasting progression. For example, if you want to get to that level 35 spellcaster, you really need to make it your main focus. For example, the wizard is the only class in the entire game that can get there without doing shenanigans with feats and leveling of some sort. And in order to do that, they also need to take wizard as their starting class. This is because the starting benefits of a spellcaster almost always include +1 caster at the back of them, whereas marshals obviously do not. The point of this is to give some incentive to these casters to take their first level, their starting benefits, in a spellcasting class and cause their hit dice to be lower. The other thing that's important is that if you try to split level between classes, you're going to turn into more of a Gish. Especially if you're trying to actually get to that level 35, you really need to find the classes that give you the most spellcasting levels as fast as possible, which is the wizard. The wizard has the most spell progression available to the game. Now, when it comes to the martial side of things, I have also buffed marshals. I've given them a lot of new options for getting stronger, and most importantly, the main thing I've done is tried to boost the damage of marshals. With my system, I believe that it's very easy to get high damage numbers when you're using a martial class, whereas if you're using a spell class, it's going to be really easy to try to control the battlefield. Now, some people might not like this way of thinking of things, of making spellcasters controllers and marshals the damage dealers, but that's what I feel is the best option for trying to keep the martial caster divide at its lowest as possible. Trying to make marshals have an advantage over spellcasters in damage and giving spellcasters an advantage over marshals in control. Now, the other thing I've done to really make the martial classes feel better is that there's just so many more martial classes than there were in the base game. For example, my system has got the Shepherd, the Swashbuckler, the Trainer, the Vanguard, the Samurai, and so many more martials that are just new, in addition to the ones you already saw. And one thing that martials can do that casters don't necessarily get to do very often is kind of a rule break scenario. For example, Gladiator has an ability called Vigor, which allows them to spend initiative to do extra things on their turns. The fighter gets Action Surge, which allows them to take that extra action on a turn for free, which is a huge buff, and spellcasters want that. But if they take a multi-class in fighter, they're sacrificing their spell slot progression. And that's kind of the idea behind this, is that a lot of times in order to get those really strong martial features, you'll have to sacrifice levels in your caster. And so that's the basic premise behind how I tried to buff martials. Again, I'm only one guy and I have a full-time job, so I'm not trying to by any means say that this is perfect, and I am in no means trying to say that this is balanced. But I hope that what I've done helps as much as possible with the martial caster divide. The only other thing I want to bring up is the way in which the classes actually go, the way in which you actually start the game. Now, again, this is my system for making backgrounds and my system for choosing a race. You don't have to use any of these options. The only thing that I want to make sure that everybody understands is that the system was made for characters that have lower starting skills than a regular D&D character. Don't use point buy and then use this system, because if you do, your characters are going to max out all of their stats easily. They get way more ASIs than a normal character would. And that's how my background system works here. As you can see, it works in the same way that all the other class trees work, where you get to pick branches. Again, all of these boxes are branches, and then gain the features within those branches. So you'll start here when you pick your background. You get a +5 to all your stats. They all start at 0, which means that after you pick your background, they'll all be at least 5. And then from this point on, you get to pick 9 branches, but only one of them can be red. So these are kind of like your end goal, your ending branches that you can pick. And they all give you things like +3 intelligence or +4 to any stat, +3 to intelligence, and +3 to strength. And you see these proficiency bonus increases around here because you'll probably want to take 2 of those so you can get as much out of your proficiency bonus as possible. The basic premise behind this is that you can have a slightly customized background and give your skills a bit of a boost before you actually get into the game. Of course, the main way that you'll be getting those skill increases is through ability score improvements. Characters in my version of the game have lower skills than regular D&D characters. And this is another way I've tried to flesh out that martial caster divide, in that casters will have way less ability score improvements and feats than martial classes. They just have that over the casters. The other thing you get once you finish taking these branches is you gain 1 feat for free. This is your origin feat, as I've referred to it. You'll gain 1 ability score improvement, so that's again a +2 to 1 stat or a +1 to 2 stats. And you'll get 1 language. You also gain the language of the race you're taking, so in total you'll have at least 2 languages known. Finally, I want to go over races. Now again, this is the system that I use. You do not need to use this system if you're using the rest of my class tree system. These are races that I use for my games, and they work really well for me. If you don't like them or you think you should change them in any way, feel free. Again, I do not want to try to restrict anyone. The whole point of this system is to allow for more freedom in your games. But this is the races that I have available to my party, which is Elves, Kitsune, Dragonborn, Galaman, Gnomes, Humans, Hingla, Dwarves, Orcs, Lamia, Mermaids, Arachne, Tieflings, and then here are some half-breeds you can do. Now, the whole system is made for half-breeding very easily also. So, for example, if you wanted to play as an elf, you would be medium in size, you would gain 60 feet of dark vision and have advantage against being charmed, and you would meditate instead of sleeping to require only 4 hours per long rest. And then you could go over here and select, you get a +1 to your dexterity, your speed is 30 feet, and you pick one of the sub-races. So if you wanted to be a high elf, you would get +2 to your charisma and proficiency in persuasion. If you wanted to be a wood elf, you would have a +2 to your dexterity and proficiency in perception. And if you wanted to be a dark elf, you'd gain +3 to your dexterity and have 90 feet of dark vision. As you can see, after taking your background skills, you also gain a bit more from your race. Nowhere near as much as your background, because I want the background to be the main thing that kind of feeds into how you built yourself up as a person before your adventuring days. Your adventuring days also, of course, giving you more skills through those ASIs. Now, the important thing about this system also is that you can make a half-breed. So if you wanted to be, for example, half orc, half elf, you would do it as such. You could be medium in size, because they both are medium, and then you pick one trait from each of the races. So you could take the A trait from elf or the A trait from orc, and then the opposite trait from the other one. So for example, if you wanted to be a half orc, half elk with dark vision of 30 feet, and then when you crit, you deal an extra weapon die of damage, then you could also take the elves meditation instead of sleeping to require only 4 hours per long rest. And then you take either stat, so if you wanted to have a +1 to your strength or a +1 to your dexterity, it's your choice. You get 30 feet because they're both 30 feet. If they were not both 30 feet, you take whichever one you want. And then you take one subrace option from any of the available ones. So the orcs have cave, wood, and hill available to them, and the elves have high, wood, and dark available to them. You just pick one of those 6. And that's basically how half-breeds work in the system as well. There's, of course, some special half-breeds down here listed, which are centaurs, mermans, and fauna. And those are a little bit special. If you want to read all of this, you can, and it's explained down here as well. But the basic premise is this is how I do races. To wrap things up, I just want to say this entire system is, again, not play-tested very much. There's very, very limited that I can actually do as one person who meets every other week for D&D with his friends to actually test to make sure that everything is balanced. It's not going to be balanced. And if you're trying to play this as, the type of person that takes all the best options and plays it to the best of their abilities, you will break the game. It's not going to be hard. But if you're trying to play this to have fun with your friends, which is, I believe, the goal of D&D in the first place, I think this system can work really well for you. It can give you way more freedom in your class choices. Again, there's 40 classes, and they will all be released for free if you want to try them out. I haven't gotten done finishing them all, and it's going to take a while because I'm only one guy. But if you want to see the rest of these come out and explained in full like I've been doing, why don't you drop me a like, give me a subscription, and I'll keep chugging these out as fast as I possibly can. But thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it made sense, because I'm really bad at explaining things. Goodbye.